people that may even think today that they don't have gifts or the ability to connect, I think they will, in the next few years, and they'll be embracing their gifts and their abilities and their uniqueness. And so I'm just thrilled that we get to sit here and have this conversation and hopefully start seeing some more of those light bulbs go off.
Hello, welcome to Impact the World, and today I am delighted to introduce my guest, Dallisa Hocking. Dallisa is a fifth-generation psychic medium, so this is a topic that's very close to my heart. And we're going to talk a little bit today about how intuition and the gift works for Dallisa, and some of her life experiences, and plenty more. So thank you for being here, and I'm thrilled to welcome Dallisa. Hi, Dallisa. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me, Lee. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so I was thinking maybe we could start by talking about how we got connected. So you've explained to me that you were brought to an event I was doing in Las Vegas in 2016. And then about a year later, you came to one of my energy mastery weekends in Los Angeles, which is where I first really got to know you. Mm-hmm. And then a member of my team had a reading with you about maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. And she said to me, "Oh, do you remember Dallisa? I just had a reading with her. It was amazing." And I went, "Great, I'll book." And so I booked, and I had a couple of readings with you over the last 18 months, and they've been fantastic. So I highly recommend Dallisa for readings if you're looking for a good reader. And that's kind of how we ended up being here today. I thought it would be wonderful for you to come and just talk about your specific experience, which is quite unique.
Yeah, I'm glad that we get to have this opportunity to sit down and talk, because the way that we got here, I think, is so special. We've talked about my friend who has since passed away, but she's the one that said, "You've got to go check out this Lee Harris." I'm like, "Who the heck's Lee Harris?" And that was all those years ago. And that's, I think about that sometimes, like there's that thread. And, here I was in that Las Vegas event, my first introduction to you. You called me up on stage and read me. And then that led to LA and going to that event with you for a couple of days, which was life-changing. And I kept pulling that thread. And so it's interesting to think, we've had all these years, and now here we are, and we get to sit here and have a conversation. And it's one of these moments where I just feel like I could pinch myself.
Oh, it's great. I'm thrilled you're here. And what's really interesting for me, I did one-on-one sessions for 15 years. So to me, the intuitive and the psychic arts, they are my realm, and they're something I know very well, and they're something I work with. But what's so fascinating for me about you've had such a different experience than I had, which is you are a fifth generation psychic and medium. So I'm like, wow, what's that like? Like, coming from this lineage and growing up in that way. So I guess my first question to you is, what is that like? Because you've had an experience that most of us don't have. Most of us find spirituality or our intuitive gifts usually a little later in life, or when we're with a family that supports it, which is quite rare for most people. So how was it for you as a kid growing up with this as part of your life? What did that look like and feel like?
It's a good question. My grandmother and I were very close, and she's the one that would get her ESP downloads. And so we would sit in her living room, and she would call me Lisi. That was my nickname. And she would talk about what she was predicting. And she would see with her own eyes full body apparitions that would walk through the middle of her living room. And so as a kid, I was half intrigued, half absolutely terrified to sit there and talk to her about it. I was afraid. I didn't want to really see them. I didn't want to see the ghosts, but I really wanted to hear what she had to say. And so I was walking that line as a kid, and I don't really remember having any real abilities as a kid. My gifts actually came in much later. But we would sit there, and I remember one day she said, "Lisi, you're going to need a stage name one day." And I was little, and I remember looking at her thinking, has she lost her mind? Like, is this where we're at now? But as a kid, I did a lot of ballet and tap, and I was doing a lot of community theater. And so I thought, maybe one day I'll be in maybe a notable play and I'll need a stage name, and never thinking that it would lead me where I'm at today, because all of my gifts really dropped in 2015. And so it was not what I was expecting. I was working full-time for a university in Texas. I had started a dating and matchmaking company. I was really minding my own business. And it was this twist of fate where I went on a trip to New York to the Omega Institute. And I decided last minute to fly up there to attend a workshop on synchronicity. Of course, like, how ironic could it be? And I go there and I listen to Dr. Eben Alexander, who talked about his near-death experience and his journey as a neurosurgeon. And all of these things happen on this trip. But the last night of my trip, I was staying at a friend's house who just so happened to have a home near the Omega Institute. I had met him through a project in Las Vegas. He said, "Come stay with me. Let's catch up." So I go to his home, we eat dinner, we're sitting there watching a movie, and the telephone rang. And his family called to tell him that his aunt, that he loved very much, had fallen down a flight of stairs and died unexpectedly. I give Peter my condolences. He goes to bed. I go to the guest room. I don't really think much more of it. Of course, I'm sorry that he's going through this, but I didn't know his family at all. I knew him through work. And so I go to sleep that night, and I saw his aunt as I was sleeping. She came through while I was asleep, and I could see her, I could hear her. And she said, "Please tell my nephew I'm okay. I made it to the other side." And I remember waking up the next morning, kind of coming out of that fog of when you're asleep, and thinking, oh my God, something happened last night that was very out of the ordinary and unexpected. And so I got out of bed. I walk out to the kitchen where my friend is. I said, "Your aunt, I saw her last night." And my mind started going back to being that little girl in the living room with my grandmother and thinking about what we would share as stories and what my grandmother would tell me that she would see. And here I was all these years later, and I saw spirit, and I described what she looked like, and I delivered the message, and my friend confirmed that that's what she looked like. And a couple of days later, I was living in Texas at the time, I got a text message while I was eating lunch with a friend, and I dropped my phone and I actually started tearing up in the restaurant. My friend, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I said, "This is his aunt." And I could see the photo that my friend had just sent me from her memorial service. And it was exactly as she had appeared a few nights before. So I have my grandmother to thank for really laying that foundation where I wasn't that afraid of it. I didn't want to see it in front of me like a person walking across the room. But I think that's why my clairvoyant gift looks like a daydream. It's not scary. And so spirit uses my senses in a way that feels okay. It feels like a gift. It doesn't feel like a burden. And so, I had my grandmother. She would tell me stories about how her grandmother would see spirits on the farm that she lived on. And I've just been really interested from a very early age, but never really thinking that it would happen to me.
And what about your mother and or father, whichever side the grandmother was from, and the parent in between these two grandmothers? So you've talked about your grandmother and her grandmother having the psychic gift. What about the generations in between? Did they have it too, or is it more of a skipped the generation?
My father, it's on my dad's side of the family, and he's very intuitive. And when I need an answer that I'm having a hard time seeing myself for my own life, I will typically go and ask him, what's your sense of this? What do you get from this? And so he's really great. He doesn't do it professionally. And his grandmother, I don't know if she ever really tuned into it or not. I didn't have a chance to really get to know her well. And there hasn't been any stories that have come out about her and any gifts that she had. But I know at least my dad, my grandmother, and my great-great-grandmother. And then who knows before that, there could be even more.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. My mom is very intuitive, but will now own that more than she ever did before. And I know in a way, me doing what I do publicly the last 20 years has given a bit of a permission slip for that. And she comes to my events but it wasn't in her wheelhouse. So I also wonder about lineages for us that we don't even know about, because perhaps, or we're living at a time where I feel like this is more allowed and more discussed and more shared because of the internet and other forms that have allowed it to become more shared than ever before. So it's just an interesting thing, isn't it, to pull on those threads of lineage, really. And you're a fascinating example of that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I am really blessed to be able to come from this family that is open about it and very supportive. And I always felt like I could talk to them about what was happening. I have a 90-minute stage show where I do readings from the audience. My parents have flown from out of town to come and see some of those shows. So it's been really great to look out in the audience and see them, and they're cheering and they're so happy for me. And I know not everyone has that same experience. So I know how blessed I am to have that. And maybe if you don't have it in your own family, there are other, people that you can meet and connect with and talk to about what's happening. You're not alone. Yeah.
We'll be right back to the conversation in just a moment, so stay tuned.
If you're enjoying this conversation with Dallisa and you'd like to know more about oracle cards, she has something really special waiting for you inside the portal. It's a video course called The Art of Reading Oracle Cards.
This in-depth presentation from Dallisa will walk you through how to use oracle cards in your own life.
I believe every single person has psychic abilities. It's just whether or not they want to embrace them and practice the skills.
Dallisa really walks us through many different areas, everything from how to choose a deck, clearing a deck, how to intuitively read. Dalisa's a wonderful presenter, and this is something that she has been doing for many, many years, as well as giving readings herself, as well as teaching workshops.
If you're a Portal member, you'll find this course and many more in your Portal Presents library. If you're not in the portal yet, we'd love to welcome you into our heart-centered community. Go to leeharrisenergy.com to learn more.
So you've mentioned your Vegas show to me before, your stage show. So how did you go from 2015, I have this profound vision of my friend's aunt, and that kind of opens the whole thing. What was the moment that you then end up with this Vegas show? Like, what was the trajectory to get there?
A great question. So when I first started doing readings, I only did them over the phone. And I think it actually made me a stronger reader because I couldn't see the person or the body language.
Absolutely.
And just tuning into their energy alone. So I didn't have the interference. At least for me, when my brain gets too involved, it gets more complicated. So if I'm just over the phone, it's like a blank canvas that I can then really bring in and channel that information from spirit. So I started over the phone, and then I thought, well, I better quit my job and dissolve my dating and matchmaking company. I better move back to Las Vegas because that's where my family's at. So if I fail miserably, then at least I know, like, my parents will cook me a hot meal. I know I can go take a shower over there. That was really what was going on in my brain, because I felt like I had been one version of myself that people knew up to that point. And then I suddenly announced, oh, well, I'm a psychic medium now. And there are a lot of people that were like, huh, what? And then there were people that have said, oh, well, over the years, I remember you making predictions or talking about your intuition. And I don't remember really infusing that into my life that much before 2015. So in a way, I was kind of going through this rebirthing process of who am I now? And so I moved back to Las Vegas. I worked out of a woman's spiritual center, out of the back room. And I was doing, I shouldn't even say this, but I was doing 20-minute, $20 sessions. And there were some days I was doing 16 of those in one day. And they would just keep coming to the back room one after the other. And I mean, it was a lot. But it got to the point where so many people kept coming back and then referring people. And Spirit kept saying, you're going to open your own center. Get ready. I'm like, oh, come on. I'm in a back room doing, $20 sessions. But sure enough, I opened my own location in Las Vegas. And that was really interesting, being there and having different practitioners and classes and sessions. And then people started hearing more and more about me in Las Vegas. So this haunted hotel, Binion's in Las Vegas, they had a showroom. And they said, are you interested? And so I'd kind of built a lot of my business in Las Vegas. So I was really excited. And then, of course, the pandemic hits. And I really had to have a sit down with myself of like, what are you going to do now? Because sometimes when we're hit with those really big endings, and I could feel that it was going to be, the entertainment was going to be closed for a while. And the spiritual center, we weren't having anyone there. And so then what? What do you do? And it was a choice point where I could have either gone back to the corporate world or do what I did, which is end up taking everything virtual. So then I did that, and the business has just grown in a very different way. So now I have people all over the world, which is really fun. When you jump on social media and you're just checking in and talking to people and seeing how people are doing. And you start seeing the comments. I know you have a large audience as well. And it's like, you start seeing they're from India, they're from Canada, they're from Australia. That to me is so much fun. And I love connecting with people that live in all different parts of the world, and everyone has their own experiences. And I love being able to just talk and connect with people regardless of where they live. So that's been really fun.
Beautiful. And it's funny listening to your story, because I always encourage people who want to do readings to start in the way you did, because I did the same thing, like donation based at the beginning. But hearing you say you did 16 people in a day, if you're not someone who's an intuitive or a reader, you might hear that and go, oh, okay, well, it's only 20 minutes of time. No, that's 16 energy fields, and that's 16 sets of stories. So when you said that to me, I was like, ooh, 16 people, but that is what calibrates you. I did thousands and thousands and thousands of sessions, and like you, I couldn't see the people. All I had was their name. I was often on the phone, and I think that in a way trains the gift, and you get good at it because you put the time in and the hours in. And so it's interesting that it built your stamina to then do the show, and then the internet became the new stage for your show. And yeah. I know that you've been putting out a lot more content on Instagram and other platforms over the last couple of years. How is it for you to direct a universal message? Is it the same process for you as when you're doing a one-on-one? Because I know it's different for everybody.
Yeah, I feel like it's pretty similar. And so if I sit there and I refer to them as my spirit team, angels, guides, and ancestors, I invite them to come in and I ask a question generally. And then I'll start seeing clairvoyantly or hearing words and phrases through the right ear. I'll feel things in my physical body. And I'll use that question like a focal point, kind of like a dart, being thrown at the dartboard, where that question allows me to focus in on it and then start bringing in and channeling the information. And so going on Instagram, let's say, and doing a channeled message can be very fun and interesting. And I think people like to see a demonstration of a channeled message. But yeah, and I typically don't remember it after, which I think is a fascinating part of the gift. And even if I'm doing a message from the collective or for the collective, or if I'm talking to a client one-on-one, usually within a few minutes of it being over, it's like a distant memory that just kind of dissolves and I don't have access to it anymore. And so if I wanted to know what I said, I'd really have to listen back to the Instagram stream that I was doing to get an idea of what spirit brought through.
Yeah, but how great, because you need to wipe it off the hard drive. You need to create space. So I very much relate to what you're saying there. I'm curious, how do you feel about the time that we're in? So we're recording this late 2024, but it will probably come out in the first few months of 2025. Like if you think about, say, the next 5 years, 2025 to 2030, what do you think is going to surprise people about the next 5 years?
Oh, wow. I feel like there's so many things.
I know. But you can pick one of them.
Ooh, I think what we're going to be able to do with AI, I think we're already getting a glimpse of it, but I think it's going to be a part of so many things that we do. And I think what AI will be able to do for us is going to bring both amazing things and gifts and also challenges that we haven't had to face as a society before. Because I think that AI could take a lot of the productivity that humans now have and take it on for itself. So I think the way that we work will be different, but I also think we'll see a lot of cures for different diseases that we have right now. I think we will be communicating with higher frequency beings on a more regular basis. I think people that may even think today that they don't have gifts or the ability to connect, I think they will, in the next few years and as we get closer to 5 years, where it'll be more of a normal practice to connect with a light being or talk to a being from another planet or another dimension. And I think it'll be more part of our regular vocabulary. And so I feel so grateful that we get to have this conversation, because I know that whoever is watching this, the universe helped direct them to this conversation for a reason. Because I see it all the time in my practice. People saying, I don't have anyone to talk to. I'm having these downloads or these visions, or I'm hearing things and I feel so different than everyone else. And I think what we do is going to become more normalized, and people won't feel alone anymore, and they'll be embracing their gifts and their abilities and their uniqueness and bringing that into their communities and then into the world in a bigger way. And so I'm just thrilled that we get to sit here and have this conversation and hopefully start seeing some more of those light bulbs go off.
Mm. And if you think about the next 5 years for yourself, do you have any dreams, visions, or feelings about what kind of personal transformation you or your work might go through in the next 5 years?
When you're the picture, or the frame, whatever that saying is, like when you're too close to it, you can't really see it. So I went on AI a couple days ago and I said, okay, hi AI, you know me pretty well by now. What do you think one of my big milestones will be in 2025? Give me an image of it. And I was pretty shocked. It drew me an image of me up on stage. And there were people sitting all around inside of this room. And it described me hosting a global summit where all of these people from all over the world could come and connect together in what we're doing with spirituality and psychic information. And I thought, wow, this thing like really does know me, because that would be a dream that I would have, is how could I bring people together in a way that feels impactful, where somebody walks away like I did with your event in LA, where I walked away and I thought, that touched me in a way that I couldn't have anticipated before I went, but I knew I had to be there. I would love to be able to create something where people just hear about it and they go, I don't know what exactly I'm going to learn there, but I know I need to go. And that they show up with their hearts and their minds open. And that in some way, not really because of me, Dallisa, but because of something that happens for them at the event, that they walk away changed for the better. So that's really what I would like to step more into, is these sacred spaces of connection. I want to teach people how to develop their abilities. You know, I teach psychic development. I have a tarot masterclass. I want people to feel empowered within themselves. Because I've noticed in, years of doing this now, some people get hooked on the readings, and sometimes they want to talk about the same things over and over again. And some people really just want to have a conversation and feel heard. And so I get that part of it as well. But I want to say to everyone, you have this within yourself. You already have everything you need inside of you. And it's one thing to bounce an idea off of someone or brainstorm, but you don't have to go to someone else to get the answers that you already have inside. And so I have a true passion for teaching people how to really hone their gifts and understand them in a deeper way, so that they can walk through life feeling more confident and feeling more aligned with the faith that everything is working for them and everything is going to work out, even if we can't see it right now. But I'd rather have them in that frequency of faith rather than fear. And fear is so big right now.
Well, it's interesting because I love everything you said, but I would be remiss if I didn't pick up on the fact that you've been speaking very positively about AI. And you did also say there will be some challenges. And as you're talking, I can feel certain members of the audience going, well, I don't know about AI. And which is very in our culture. There is a fear and a concern. And in many ways, some of that's very, very legitimate. So I'm curious, for the people who maybe are still either suspicious of AI or mostly resistant to it or concerned about it, what would you say to them that perhaps they could open to some of the positives that I also hear you and I feel the truth of it, that you are telling us about, these positive aspects that we can work with as well?
Yeah, I think there'll be things that will be developed around crime and solving crimes that will be really interesting. I think that we'll be able to do much more with our own jobs and our production than we've ever been able to before. It's like this quantum computing. It feels like when we ask it a question and we're able to do so much more in a lot less time. I also think that there will be a lot of people that resist it and that don't want to use it. And so that wouldn't surprise me at all. And I would say to them, trust your inner guidance. And if it feels like it's not something that's aligning with you right now, that's okay. because I don't think everything is meant for everyone.
Agreed.
But yeah, I think, at least for me, I like to keep an open mind about what's on the horizon and what good can come out of it. But I also have learned to just trust that inner voice. And if something doesn't quite seem right, or if they're saying, oh, go download this and everybody can, get XYZ if you log into this today. And it's like, I want to probably pump the brakes a little bit and just see what starts happening and evolving with it. So I'm not probably going to be the first adopter of anything that comes out, but I am a very curious person by nature. And so I think I'll always kind of have this question mark about what's evolving and frankly, how it can connect us with a deeper spiritual path, because I do think it's connected and can be connected to higher frequencies. But also with anything else, there's that flip side to it. And so that, I often get asked about Ouija boards, for example. Should you use a Ouija board? I'm like, depends on your energy.
Mm-hmm.
You could hold it and ask it a question and be in this really high vibration and have it help you channel a message through. I used to play with them as a little kid in my grandmother's house. But also, if you're holding an intention or a frequency, in my experience, that is not of that highest frequency or as high as you can get it, then it can be a portal to bring in things that are a denser or heavier energy. So with any kind of tool, I think it can go either way.
It's interesting you mention your tarot masterclass, because tarot, I was probably taken to a tarot reader. In fact, I think I took my mom with me when I was about 15. And then when I went to university, there was a local tarot reader in Manchester, and I would go and see her about every 3 months. And this was pre my own intuition really coming online. It was already starting, but like you, I didn't really know until a few years later. But I remember being in the energy of the tarot reading and something felt true. There was something about sat across that table and the crackle. And of course, maybe at the time my mind interpreted it as the cards or her being a good reader. But years later, I went, oh, no. That was me sat in the conduit experience that I now deliver and run through my body, but I recognize the truth of the conduit experience. So I think tarot is an amazing tool. And I have some friends who are, to this day, very gifted tarot readers. But for me, it was one of my spiritual, if you like, psychic awakening entry points. So what compelled you to create a tarot masterclass?
I've learned from doing, I don't know how many readings at this point, some people just want to see proof, because I could channel it through and they could say, oh yeah, I understand. And that makes sense. And yeah, but could you pull a card?
Right.
And so I love the story of the cards and, starting at the Fool and moving through and then the other cards that help support it. And so like I said, I'm very curious by nature. And so I love being able to sit with the cards and see what story comes out of them. But yeah, some people really just want to know, what 3 cards, past, present, future, are you going to pull for me after you delivered an hour channeling? And so I think that class really speaks to the people that are looking for some kind of proof. And I remember early on when I started doing readings, I took an angel oracle class, and I found them to be really beautiful and uplifting and can really bring in another element of support into a reading. But tarot has a different frequency. I've found that tarot cards are much better in my experience of predicting energy that's around someone. Whereas oracle, there's all different kinds of oracle decks. They each have their own energy, but I found them to be helpful in a coaching moment or talking about a life experience. Where tarot, when I'm shuffling tarot cards and somebody is saying, should I quit my job? I'm like, well, let's see what the cards say, and so you flip them over. I think they're a bit more interactive in a way that can be fun. So for me, tarot feels a little bit lighter and a little bit more playful than what I may, get from an oracle deck.
I love that you make the comparison with oracle decks of coaching, because that rings really true to me and how I experience tarot. Because one of the readers that I go and see at least once a year usually, because I love the art of reading and intuition, and people sometimes say, well, you can do it for yourself, and I'm like, I can and I do, but I also like, there's a few of you that I really rate, and so I like to go and get a different perspective, and you learn different things. And as you said earlier, we can sometimes be in our own way. I don't have that problem when I'm channeling, but it's lovely to have an intuitive reader reflect things to you that you've maybe never considered. And it really lets you receive as well and just take it in. But what rings true about what you just said, to me, tarot is a little like astrology. And the oracle cards are a bit more like coaching and transformation work. And there is something, and I don't know, is it because it's so ancient? Is it's wired into our culture around tarot and we have a real history with it? I'm not sure, but I really like that differentiation you just made. I'd never thought of it that way, but tarot is a little bit like an astrology reading, which I know you're also into.
I love astrology.
Yeah.
I love it. There's so much to it and it's so complex. But once I started learning astrology, I've tried to blend it more into my work. And even if I'm just going on social media and talking about a retrograde that we're having and what that can mean, because I love teaching, I just share from what I know. And I don't claim to be an astrologer. I call myself an astrology enthusiast. But I remember I was going through a dark night of the soul when I was living in Texas, and I felt like everything was falling apart and I couldn't figure out how to feel happy again. Just a lot of compounding pressures of work and owning a company. And I remember somebody said, I know this astrologer, do you want to do a session with her? Like at this point, sure, And I got on the phone with her and she's like, oh yeah, it's Saturn. It's doing this and this and this. And you're going to be in it for a little while longer. But I think about a year from now, you're going to start to actually feel a lot lighter. And you're going to feel like you're walking into the light instead of being in the darkness. And maybe some people would hear that and go, oh my God, I have another year. But for me, I was like, thank God that there's something on the horizon I can look forward to, that I know that if I just keep going, like that I will be greeted by this light at the end of the tunnel that is really going to help me see why I had to go through it. And I think at that point in my life, I was being, I think there was a lot of energy crafted in and around my life, around learning my worth. And what I find really interesting in this line of work, at least my experience has been that what I've been through as a person, I tend to attract those people in that want a reading from me, that can see themselves in some part of my story, or they just feel drawn to me and they don't know why. But what I've learned is it's often because I've walked in their shoes. And I don't really sit there and make it a point about me in a session, but I just know in my mind, as I'm doing their channeling and their reading, I'm like, I understand why the universe sent you to me. I get you. And I really understand you. And I'm going to do the best job I possibly can to help you see your own light again. And that you remember that you're here for a reason. And I'm honored that I get to cross into their life, even if it's just one session.
I think that's so true. And so many of us relate to that you're often, it's almost like you've gone through the transformation in yourself. And so your energy field holds the formula Yet what I think attracts people to you is not necessarily that you hold the transformation formula, but you've been in that place, because then you can have compassion, empathy, and also some understanding. So I think that's perfect. Curious with your teaching of psychic development. What do you notice with the people who come to you to learn to allow their psychic gifts in more? What do you notice is one of our most common blocks as people around letting that in?
Yeah, they don't think they can do it.
Yeah.
Because most of the time when they reach me, they've kind of gotten over a lot of the barriers around what are people going to think, or my family will not like if I'm taking a psychic development class. By the time they get to me, they're like, okay, let's just see what happens. So they usually come in with an open mind, open heart, and just willing to try. So one of the things I really talk about in the foundation class is you get to be right. So whatever you're thinking, that's what's going to end up happening in class. So if you're going to be here with me and you think you can do it and you allow it to happen, guess what? It's going to happen. And they get so excited about it, which then raises the frequency and allows the information to come in. Because I talk about it like a frequency scale, right? So humans are kind of down at the bottom with their emotions kind of day to day. And then spirit is a lot higher. And the closer we can get our frequency to come in to meet spirit, the more information we can bring in. So psychic information is a little bit higher than where we're at on a day-to-day. And then mediumship's even higher in my experience. It's why not all psychics are mediums, right? Because I think you have to bridge that gap a bit more. But yeah, once people get over the hurdle of believing they can do it, I get people all the time. I just got done teaching a class. I have several emails and they've said, I can't believe this, and this happened in class. I can't believe I saw this. I heard this. And they're just blowing themselves away. And that's fun as a teacher to see that I know that anybody can do it. I may have been born into a family that had this lineage, but I think it's a muscle. And I think the more that we work that muscle and we practice, the higher our frequency gets and the more information we can pull through. It's kind of like a kid being born as a genius pianist, and you see them performing, you're like, you're 7, how are you playing that music? Whereas some people have to practice a long time to get to where that 7-year-old is. So some people are born with the ability to do it, and some people have to really work that muscle. But I think anyone that's willing and says, I want to do it, I think they can do it.
Have you found with doing this work for work now, you have had to adjust your boundary or focus around your psychic ability in your personal life? Or for you, did bringing your psychic gift into your work not necessarily either cause a problem there or mean that you were like on all the time? Did you have a period where you had to slightly adjust when you started working as a psychic, how that psychic gift was showing up in your personal life, or was it pretty easy and fluent for you?
Mine, typically, I can turn off and on. And so if I'm going into a busy restaurant or a concert or a place that's packed with a lot of people, I don't raise my frequency high enough to where I'm going to pick it up around me. So that's been really helpful. And, talking to spirit is a two-way conversation. And I can say, I'm off right now, but I also know if something drops in, then I'm meant to hear that or receive that message. I tend to get crime premonitions. If I'm at a place where a crime is going to happen, I tend to get visions and downloads of that happening. So that's really interesting. One way it's played in kind of a funky way is dating. Because when everything came in 2015, I was going out on dates and everything was fun and doing a lot of work on myself. And when the gifts dropped in, I really could start to see other people in a different way. And so if I was on a dating app, for example, and I would see somebody's picture, I'm like, oh no, and I could like pick it out right away that it's not going to work. And so I think it really slowed down my dating life. And people that I've, dated since then, since 2015, some people are very open to it and some people are not. And so I'm still trying to find that balance of, could I be in a relationship with someone that didn't believe what I do or was an atheist? Or I haven't quite been able to figure that part out yet because it's such a big part of who I am that I think if I were to have a relationship that was that significant, I think they would at least have to try to understand and believe what was happening.
It's interesting because, it's similar for me that I can turn it on and off. And I don't know if you've had this, but I find that some people are disappointed because when they meet me, I think they think I'm just going to stand there and read them, which of course is not my interest. I'm like, who are you as a human and who am I? And yeah, I might get little things, but like you, turning it off is important. But dating, one of the things I found is I know the length of the relationship. And that's a little uncomfortable because, that you go, ooh, I know I need to have this experience. So, my policy with the last person I dated was I was very honest about that. And I said, no, I know we're not going to be partners because I could see it and I could feel it. And that was a little edgy for both of us, I think. But we had the season. But it is interesting, isn't it, how it changes certain things. But I know the reason I asked you the question is I think many people get scared that if they're going to open the psychic gift, it will be like a fire hose. But actually, what I know from most of us who do this is, no, you learn how to turn the fire hose off and life will make you learn. Like if you don't learn, something will happen to you and you'll go, oh, this is how I redirect my focus. So I think that's so important.
Yeah, because you're right. I think people assume it's on 24/7.
Yeah.
And it's not. And people that come to me even before they're a student and they say, I'm being woken up at 2, 3 in the morning. I'm like, well, tell them to stop.
Exactly.
They're listening. It's a two-way conversation. They're like, what? It like blows their mind that they can have a conversation with spirit and say, how about you try 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. and having boundaries, even with energy that you can't always see.
I like that you bring that up because you referred earlier to some of the core lessons that you have seen that we as a society go through around owning our psychic gift. And the thing that I was a student of self-growth and spirituality for a good 10, 11 years before I became also a teacher and a reader in that world, and still a student today. But what I've noticed is, particularly that first 5, 10 years, I was like, wow, so many people automatically give their power away to spirit, or they give their power away to a channeler. And so much of my work, once I figured that out, has been trying to bust that for people. No, a spirit's not in charge of you. It's a collaboration, it's a relationship. And I think we have been so trained to, oh, well, I should just defer and and I'm like, no. If you know you're in great hands and you've got proof of that, fine, defer. But if you don't, investigate and really pay attention. And it is a collaboration. But I think that separation from spirit that is actually very ingrained in many religions in a way, as well as other areas of our belief system as a society, it has done a great disservice because it keeps people in the separation state. And then all of their thinking is from there. And that can include, ending up having a slightly toxic relationship with spirit where you're almost in your own version of an abusive relationship where you're letting spirit tell you what to do and having all these literal and metaphoric car crashes go on in your life. And then you tell someone about them and you're like, oh, I don't know why this is happening. It's like, well, because you need to stop just doing what spirit says. It might be testing you, you know? It's a really interesting dance, but the integration of spirit and humanity is the path and the goal. And so it's our integration with it that has to be that middle point place that we find ourselves in. At least that's true for me, and that's true for my path and true for what I do. Yeah, so it's interesting to hear your experience of that. So, Dallisa, first of all, it's been wonderful to talk to you, and you've shared some amazing things. I love that vision of you on stage and creating those gatherings. That feels very, very true. I guess as a kind of closing question, I'll ask you, why do you think you incarnated at this time in this form with these gifts?
That's such a small question, Lee. I wish
You're
you would have
welcome.
dug deeper.
You can handle it, Dallisa. That's why I'm loving it your way.
So I really feel like I incarnated in this time to try to hold a flashlight. I think I've done this before. I even take people through past life journeys, and I go into the Hall of Records, and it's interesting looking at other incarnations, and that's been a fascinating experience doing that for myself and others. And so I think that before I was born, just like everyone else, I sat down and said, all right, what are we going to cook up for this one? And I think it's a culmination of things that I've been through in other incarnations where I can stand confidently in this one and hold the flashlight for people in dark caves. And that brings me great joy. And my hope is that that continues to expand, and not for me as a person, but for where we're going as a collective, and that people realize the miracle that they are living in right now, and that by being alive really is a gift. And I think it was you years ago that said, if you're alive, get curious. And that has rung through my brain for years about, if you're here, there's a reason why you're here. And that's not wasted on me.
Beautiful. Thank you. And I have no doubt that you and your flashlight are going to continue to grow in a beautiful way because of your intention behind it. So thank you so much for being here today. We could talk for hours, and maybe at a future date we will in some other format, but thanks so much for being here today on Impact the World. And I love watching you impact the world in all the ways that you do.
Oh, thanks. Same to you, Lee. Thanks for having me on.
So Dallisa and all of her work can be found at spiritandspark.com. I highly recommend her private readings, but also she has some wonderful classes, psychic development, tarot masterclass, and she puts fantastic messages out on social media too. So check her out at spiritandspark.com. And you can also, if you're a member of my portal community, you can find a beautiful workshop that Dallisa created for my portal members, which is there right now. So go check it out if you haven't already. And thank you for tuning in today on Impact the World. And we hope that something in this conversation has inspired you to trust your psychic gift, your intuition, and your path with spirit. We'll see you next time.
Connection, heart energy, and wisdom. 3 things that members in my portal community say they receive every single month from the messages, the teachings, and the themes that I offer inside my members community, the portal. Becoming a member of the portal is the most intimate way to connect with me and my work every month. If you are just starting your personal development journey or taking a deeper dive, you'll be incredibly well supported by me and my team. I'm now thrilled that we can bring along other teachers, voices, healers to offer you a wealth of support tools every single month. my team and I are committed to sharing content that uplifts, inspires, and connects people to themselves and others. As a member, you also have access to exclusive workshops and special discounts as soon as you join. I do a big broadcast every month called Live with Lee and the Z's, where I channel my guides and they illuminate world events, things we're going through, things to cultivate. And alongside that, we bring a whole host of different video, audio teachings that can help you live your life with more optimism, clarity, and empowerment. I'm very proud of what we've created. I'm very honored to serve you in there, and I hope you'll come and check it out to see if it's for you.